Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we're going to be talking about the state of the political culture and other things like that. Let not your heart be troubled. Tomorrow or the next day, we're going to talk about Elon Musk and Twitter and all of that good stuff. So make sure you're subscribed. Hit that join button to unlock special features. Sorry, I'm a little bit congested or something. Yeah, special features, support the channel, all that good stuff. Unlock your ability to post Nikos emojis and much, much more. So today's title, United They Stand, referring to Democrats and Republicans, is inspired by this book, The Ominous Parallels by Leonard Peikoff. I've spoken about this book. I've learned a lot from the book. It's talking about the parallels between the Weimar Republic, Germany, before the war, before the rise of Hitler, and, contemporary current day United States as observed in around the 1970s when Peikoff was writing the book. And I recalled erroneously that the final chapter of the book was called United They Stand, again, referring to Democrats and Republicans. Actually, that's not the name of the final chapter, but there is a chapter in this book titled United They Fell, referring similarly to the Germans, the various prominent parties. The Social Democrats maybe was one of them, the Communist Party, the Nazi, not the Nazi Party. They very much rose to power, as we know. But the parallels are that in current day US, just as in Germany back during the Weimar era, all the prominent political parties agreed with one another that laissez-faire capitalism is off the table. Laissez-faire capitalism, that is, liberty, inalienable individual rights, are off the table. Politics is a derivative branch of philosophy. So we can't really win this political debate, this political battle, until the culture has a new view of human nature, has a new view of the nature of man, the nature of ethics. And what we see in the culture is that selfishness is still a dirty word. Selfish is still an insult. Altruist is still synonymous with morality in the minds of most people, certainly most prominent people. Or utilitarianism is considered to be the greatest sort of compromise that the selfish can make with the altruist ethics. And of course, these are things that Ayn Rand very much answers with her philosophy, objectivism. Now, over the weekend, I was at an event called Better Discourse in Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth, more accurately, but not far from Dallas. And it was kind of a last minute thing I ended up doing. I've known the organizers for years. I've been at their events in the past. And this time, as kind of a last minute thing, I ended up going up there, and I even moderated a panel on kind of what to expect with the upcoming midterm elections, kind of what will matter to voters. And this event series, Better Discourse, it grew out of something that an event series, an annual event that used to be called MythCon. And I think watching the evolution of this event series and the culture around it, I think it's sort of a microcosm for the culture. And let me explain what I mean. So MythCon was originally an atheist convention. In MythCon, referring to the myth of Jesus, right? The myth of religious text. And, they would have Christians to debate. And, there was definitely a culture, a spirit of debate and discussion. And, religion was not completely laughed out of the room. But as you can tell by the title, MythCon, they were blatantly calling Jesus and the Bible a myth. And as the culture changed, so too did the culture around these MythCon events. 1 minute, a bunch of atheists are basically agreeing, yeah, religion is something that needs to be confronted, scrutinized, and ultimately probably rejected from having any sort of power in the culture, and even best to just kind of have people forget religion altogether. And then you start to see some of the atheists saying, hey, and also being a real atheist means being a feminist. And being a real atheist means being like a social justice feminist. And anyone who questions that, or anyone who says, whoa, slow down, let's talk about that, is considered now I don't know, a Nazi. I mean, a fascist, right? Like not a real atheist, not a real secularist. So, from the perspective of the non-social justice left, these social justice leftists are behaving like a religion. Now, they're not wrong to make that observation. There's the way the left has become what they've become in recent decades, certainly in recent years, very much resembles a religion. So, as the social justice left have they tried to sort of hijack the atheist movement, the sort of remaining atheists, you know, the remaining members of what was called like the skeptic community, their only real answer to religion really always was skepticism. And skepticism does not mean a healthy questioning of dogma. That's not what skepticism really is in philosophy. Skepticism ultimately is saying we can't know. There is no certainty. I think famous in my mind, Sam Harris was asked, "Do you believe Jesus rose from the grave?" And he said, "I'm almost certain that he didn't." Right? I'm almost certain that Jesus did not rise from the grave. The objectivist philosophy has a very different approach. There very much is such a thing as certainty, and there very much is the turning away completely, the throwing in the trash of the arbitrary, such as the arbitrary proposition that the impossible took place, of course. A dead man rose back up. Anyway, the answer to religion that the most atheists had was always skepticism. And that's why the so-called four horsemen of atheism ultimately, I think, withered away. Their prominence, their relevance in the culture withered away. Certainly their atheism was not what they were mostly bringing to the table. And so as the sort of atheist world was sort of getting hijacked by the social justice left, the remaining atheists, the people who were not sure about that, right? They were very much questioning the left, especially as the left was coming after their video games, coming after their comic books, coming after their movies, trying to cancel it all and inject feminism and social justice dogma into these things. That got a lot of people asking, the so-called skeptic community, well, what do we stand for? Like what, what do we believe, right? If we're rejecting this social justice leftism, and they're starting to discuss deeper questions like, well, what is knowledge or what is ethics, and what should politics be? Sooner or later, you're starting to see people say, maybe religion isn't so bad. Like religion, it's wrong, probably, right? I'm almost certain that Jesus didn't rise from the grave. But let's face it. I mean, during the Jesus era, things were more or less stable. During the pre-social justice left days, the world was a lot more livable than it is currently. They reasoned, or they inferred, and people need something, right? Especially the simple people. So I would kind of summarize the sort of skeptic, kind of mainstream atheist approach as the following. We're not going to follow faith, right? We're not going to follow religious dogma. We're going to follow reason. And reason shows us that most people can't reason. This is them speaking, right? Not me. We're following reason, and reason shows us that most people are stupid, or they're simple. They need something. So maybe religion is right for them. And sooner or later, even the intellectuals of the sort of new right, or the new skepticism, whatever, the new non-left, sooner or later, even the smarter people, or the self-appointed philosopher kings, were saying, yeah, maybe religion even for us is proper. It gives us meaning, gives us purpose. And since we're skeptic anyway, right? Since we can't really know anything, maybe religion is not as dumb as we thought. And I think Jordan Peterson played a huge role, or he had an enormous amount of influence on a lot of prominent people, to the point where today you sort of check in on a lot of the anti-social justice crowd. There was a kid, a young adult named Hunter Avallone, who you might know from YouTube. He was a prominent anti-social justice guy who was coming from a religious background. He was like a homeschooled Christian kid from somewhere in the southeast of America. And you had guys like Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, as he was called at the time. He was an atheist who was an anti-social justice guy. And currently the two of them have switched places. So Hunter is an atheist who ridicules religion, and Carl Benjamin is I think he still calls himself an atheist, but he very much says that the people need a metaphysics. The people need a metaphysics is how he puts it. And that's true. Everyone needs a metaphysics, which is to say people need a philosophy, and a very, very, very important branch of philosophy is metaphysics. That is existence. What is the nature of the universe? What is true? I mean, what is real? And then, of course, how do I know is the next branch of philosophy. Okay, all of this to say, at the Better Discourse event that I was at over the weekend, atheism and philosophy is barely brushed upon, if at all. It's not really discussed at all. It's no longer about philosophy. It's no longer about the meaning of life. It's no longer about what's true and how do I know. It's definitely now about politics and policy and the issues. And there is really no daylight in any fundamental sense between the left and the right, when it comes, at least in terms of who was at this event that I was at. And so who were at this event? A few kind of bigger names. Destiny was there, who you might know, very popular Twitch streamer or YouTube streamer, whatever. Yeah, I guess Twitch, and he mirrors his content on YouTube. Very, very, very popular. And it even though I think he tends to be a leftist, it's difficult to hate him because he's so good at arguing for free markets against the populist right. So right as the Republicans have increasingly become protectionist into, break up big tech and all that bullshit, guys like Destiny make the case for laissez-faire capitalism, not really laissez-faire ultimately. And very much you see the fact he's not laissez-faire when it comes to, let's say, the relationship of free speech and government. So there was a group called the Slants, a rock group. All the members of this group were of Asian descent, and they chose to name their band the Slants. A bit of a raunchy little joke, but that's what they chose to name their band. And as I recall, the sort of trademark office would not register their trademark because it's racist or offensive. And as I recall, Destiny was saying like, "Oh, you're not entitled to have your trademark if you're going to be racist. Like, you're not being censored." He the way he saw it. Similarly, he thinks that if a place of business, like if an employer does not respect the pronouns of an employee, then you can lose your business license. Then you won't be able to do business. I think invoking the Civil Rights Act precedent. So in many ways, Destiny is pretty horrible. But I got to tell you, it is nice to see him argue for free markets against the new right. But ultimately, yes, they all agree. They all united, they stand and will fall, the way that I see it. So I moderated a panel on what to expect in the upcoming midterm elections. And very little was really said about the upcoming midterm elections, really. It was mostly just about the issues themselves, such as the recent news out of Florida with DeSantis, I think, punishing Disney for speaking out against the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill, or as the people on the right call it, the child grooming bill. I don't really want to get into the whole the whole bill itself, but I guess I will. I think Republicans or right wingers, conservatives, they've definitely come to resemble the whole cancel culture leftists a lot of the time recently. Like the way they're treating sex education now, like it's synonymous with grooming children. You can definitely make the case against sex education in schools, but it's been done for a long time, right? Sex education in school has been done for a long time. So to just start pointing at it and say they're grooming children, it's hyperbolic and it's not productive, and it's in most cases not true, or it's most likely not true, I think. So I think a sort of feature of cancel culture is pointing at something that's been widely done, widely circulated for a long time, and suddenly demanding that everyone cancel it, treat it like it's horrific, and that everyone should have known it's horrific. It's very Orwellian in a sense, kind of like we're at war with this country, and suddenly the speaker is slipped a note. Oh no, actually we're at war with that country. We're allied with these guys, and everyone is expected to immediately switch sides. Reminds me of when Trump gets up and says whatever passes through his head, and immediately the crowd agrees with him. So I know I am pissing off a lot of people today with some of my anti-Trump, anti-right-wing rhetoric, but I mean, this is the way I see it. And in response to the bill that was passed forbidding schools from using the word gay or teaching about sexual identities to children, I think below 3rd grade or below 4th grade, Disney spoke out against this bill. And, that's stupid. I think Disney should just focus on making movies and running a theme park. DeSantis then revoked Disney's status in a political sense, their ability to sort of have their own security, have their own sort of policing. And yeah, this is creepy. It's absolutely fascist. I know the left has done it for ages. I understand they did something similar with Chick-fil-A when it was said that the owner or the CEO of Chick-fil-A was against gay marriage about 10 years ago. I think Chick-fil-A was losing some of their business licenses at some of their franchises around America, maybe Canada. I don't remember exactly where. But yes, I understand the left has done this, but you don't surrender your principles. You don't surrender liberty. You don't give the left what it is that they've wanted for decades, for over a century. You're just going to hand it all over to them. You're just going to give it all up for what? All right, I'll calm down. Let me take a sip of what's left of my cappuccino. There were a few bigger names at this event and a lot of kind of smaller names, like smaller, either like public intellectuals or people that have a YouTube channel that focuses on the issues, politics and culture. And, I tend to say, don't dismiss even the smaller names, because even if they've got like a smaller size podcast, there's a good chance that very influential people are watching their podcast. And I think we've got a great example of that here in our little Ayn Rand fan community. Yaron Brook is obviously not the biggest podcast out there, but in terms of who's watching or listening to his show, some very influential people. I know like Lex Fridman is an avid listener to the Yaron Brook show. I've heard that someone in the Trump administration was an avid listener to the Yaron Brook show, which could account for some of the better policies that took place under Trump. So, don't dismiss even the smaller content creators out there. There's a very good chance that the PewDiePies of the world are paying attention and getting being influenced. It's influencing the way they think. On the panel that I moderated, I found the leftist on the panel, Ben Burgess, I think his name is. Ben, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Ben Burgess. He's what I call like an old new left guy. So he's like from the hippie generation. I don't know how old he is, but that's kind of what he represents to me. He's not the new left, which is, identity politics all day and all night. And maybe he's not like a hardline communist, like the very old left. So he's more the new, like the old new left. He's what they called new left in the 1960s and 70s. And he very much wants this whole culture war thing to go away so that he can advocate for the Bernie Sanders platform, right? Like the left are shooting themselves in the foot, right? The Democrats have been shooting themselves in the foot with by polarizing, dividing the various communities, the various demographics, right? Telling everyone that the other demographic is their enemy. You're being oppressed by those guys, and those guys are being oppressed by these guys. What good does that do when you're trying to turn America socialist, when you're trying to have more regulation, more redistribution of wealth? The best thing you can hope for is to have the union workers vote for you, right? The best thing you can have is to have white America give up capitalism. But the left have been shooting themselves in the foot in in the way that they've been embellishing identity politics and things relating to race and sex and sexual orientation. But luckily for the left, the right have picked up exactly where they left off, and they are very much pushing in my opinion, something very close to the Bernie Sanders agenda. In fact, many big Trump supporters, big Trump voters were at one point Bernie Sanders voters. Bernie Sanders fans would have voted for Bernie if he was the nominee on the Democrat side. The new right today is, I think, very much what progressives were 100 years ago, certainly, probably much more recently. But I mean, when you look at the original progressives, right? And I mean, this sort of ties into the ominous parallels by Peikoff. When we look at the history of fascism, the progressives in America in some ways influenced the fascists over in Europe. And the progressives in America advocated what? Galvanizing Americans around something other than liberty, other than individual rights. Galvanizing Americans around the flag, around the nation, nationalism, a national purpose, a national adventure. So that was what progressives were originally about in the 1910s or 1920s, whenever they first rose. I think the Woodrow Wilson was president in the 1910s, right? That was his decade. So that was it. The World War I, America went into World War I because of the progressives, and the world is still paying the price. Americans and everyone else are still paying the price for that ridiculousness. And if that whole nationalistic agenda sounds familiar, it's obviously what Republicans have been flirting with heavily, if not completely getting into bed with in recent years. So I moderated the panel on what to expect in the upcoming elections, and largely they all wanted to talk about the Don't Say Gay bill, as it's called, or the child grooming bill, as it's also called, and the way DeSantis is treating Disney. Of course, the two Republicans sitting to my right seem to very much support DeSantis's actions, the leftist at the end of the to my left side, Ben Burgess, as I recall, was not exactly looking to separate government from business, but also just thinks it's stupid because the law that Disney spoke out in support of is not even. If you actually look at the law, he was saying it doesn't even say don't say gay, or it doesn't even actually address the concerns of many of the conservatives. But mainly the leftist was saying, forget. I mean, this is just nonsense. He was saying that was a big thing that caused controversy on the stage. He said this culture war stuff is mostly nonsense. And like I said, he wants to just forget about all this culture war stuff and get down to the economics. And that's where he knows, I'm sorry to say, he knows that there's very little resistance coming from anyone these days. United they stand. United they stand against capitalism. United they stand against individual rights, against taking individual rights seriously. United they stand against, principles. They gloat, the Republicans these days. They gloat about how they're going to beat the left and they're not going to be slowed down by any, quote, autistic principles. Let me know how that works out, I suppose. And there was Sean Fitzgerald also sitting on the stage. His name on YouTube is also Actual Justice Warrior, which is I guess a play on Social Justice Warrior. He's Actual Justice Warrior. I have not seen a lot of his content. I know a lot of people like it. A lot of people that maybe you and me are friendly with appreciate his content, and he seemed pretty sensible in my meeting or observing him on stage. But I mean, all this talk of the education stuff, the Don't Say Gay bill, and all of that, and all this talk of DeSantis dealing with Disney, not nary a mention of actual abolishing public education. So not once did anyone, including the, I guess, libertarian-ish Sean Fitzgerald, nobody said, this is what you get when education is made public. This is what you get when the government runs schools. Like, this is one of the problems, the unsolvable problems that you get. 10 years ago, I think the two Republicans on the stage would have, at least one of them probably would have pointed out that schools should be privatized anyway, or at least have charter schools, have something that can move us in the direction away from the status quo. Certainly, I would expect a libertarian to bring up that point 10 years ago, 5 years ago even. But nope, not today, not over this past weekend. Nobody even went near that. It was all just nitpicky and arguing, rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Yeah, and that's, I think, the culture we live in. So that's what I'm dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. Now, the good news is, if there is any silver lining, is that if people are interested in capitalism, if they are interested in another point of view, if they are interested in a bit more of a philosophical approach, if the people are looking for a metaphysics, Ayn Rand is very much, I think, high on the list now of authors to read, of places to turn. I mean, a lot of people, I think, watch this channel. Like I mentioned earlier, even smaller creators, smaller channels might have a lot of influence because of who's watching. I think people watch this channel who you might be surprised. So if there is a silver lining, I think we've got much fewer frauds pretending to support capitalism these days, and that could mean more people are pregnant or impregnable to objectivism. So yeah. Let's read some super chats. Thank you, Marilene. Thank you, Jonathan Honig. Thank you, Allie. She says, to me, host a MythCon and promote Rand. Sounds fun. Yeah, so I have in the past. I have been on the stage as a speaker, and I was kind of a breakout star one or two of the times. I don't remember. It's a bit blurry because it's been a few years. This was all pre-pandemic, so the world was a different place. But yeah, I was kind of a breakout star. I was the one challenging the audience even. So like, these audiences, like, they clap anytime you say anything with some charisma and some conviction. So I would say something pro-capitalist and I would get applause from the audience. And I would say, like, well, slow down. Are you guys, do you guys support capitalism when it comes to Silicon Valley? Are you cheering on Congress as they drag what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg, in and violate him in front of everybody? Like, so I was challenging the audience, and the audience feedback, the people who filled out reviews very much reflected that they wanted to see more of me. So I think the way that objectivists or fans of Ayn Rand could impact the culture is by going where we're invited and making our point with charisma, but with trying to be careful. Trying to be careful not to speak above our pay grade. So I think I've matured a little bit over the last couple of years in terms of trying not to overstep what I actually can demonstrate logically, or can demonstrate inductively. Jonathan Honig, thank you again for the super chat. And then Jonathan Honig, yet again, says, recommendation to listen to Dr. Peikoff's lectures on education and book, Why Johnny Can't Think. Yes, can't go wrong. Roland says, hey, buy another cappuccino. Thank you. I actually prepare my own cappuccino most days. And I will run out of beans, and I will run out of water. I mean, water isn't free. The water that's required to make the cappuccino. I use milk, mostly almond milk, actually, for the reason that it doesn't expire as fast. Because, I mean, actual, cow juice, it's got an expiration date. It's like you got like a week to drink it or less. It's like, almond milk, however, doesn't froth as well when I froth it for my cappuccino. But first of all, that's on me to be a better frother. And also, at least it doesn't expire as fast. All right, enough cappuccino talk. Thank you, Roland, for the gesture. And also, your super chat is primarily supporting this network. So cappuccinos all around. And by cappuccinos, I mean promoting Ayn Rand. All right, Marilyn with $5 says, YouTube won't allow my post on sex education, so you'll have to imagine what I might have said. That's right. That's exactly right. All right, those are all the super chats. Okay, so this turned out to be a little bit of a kind of like a crash course in the history of atheism in America and what it morphed into. It turned into people mostly talking politics and policy rather than philosophy, rather than metaphysics, rather than ethics. And that's what you get. And when it comes to the latter, when it comes to policy, when it comes to discussions of politics, united they stand. United they stand. Democrats, Republicans, virtually everyone else, united they stand against liberty, against capitalism. And increasingly cozy are Republicans getting towards religion, increasingly. And again, I know people say, like, look, I mean, the world is falling apart without religion, so maybe we were wrong to throw religion away. Maybe we threw out the baby with the bathwater. And I say, listen, son, the religion you grew up around is not going to be the one that's going to make a comeback. Okay, what the evangelical Christianity we saw a little bit of in decades past was very much like a fusion of various influences, a fusion of Enlightenment philosophy with pure Christianity. But this culture has very much explicitly rejected the Enlightenment, I think. Mostly. There was a book by Steven Pinker, Enlightenment Now, and from what I understand, obviously the right, you know, the Yoram Chazonis of the world, Chazoni, I guess is his name, of the world, they're ridiculing, or they're rejecting the Enlightenment. And of course, the left, right? The postmodern left, they think, well, first of all, who's this white guy writing a book to begin with? Second of all, why is a white guy telling us to listen to a bunch of dead white guys from the past about philosophy? I think we can figure it out ourselves. So yeah, not a whole lot of Enlightenment support these days. So all of this to say, if religion makes a comeback, it's not going to be church on Sundays. It's not going to be, you know, church and Chick-fil-A. If you don't like the world as it currently is, you're really not going to like it once there's nothing standing between church and state. Roland with 199 euros says, I drink my coffee with almond milk too. Yeah, alternative milk. You know, a lot of people out there saying we need alternative news, right? Alternative media. I say, how about alternative milk? Nothing against regular milk, by the way. I fully support the farmers, the dairy farmers. I think cheese is great. All right, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. Not sure if the video from Better Discourse is online. It might be. I know it live streamed on Odyssey, the alternate video hosting website. It live streamed, but I haven't seen a video on there yet for a playback. So not sure if you'll be able to see it. There's not much of me to see anyway. I mostly, asked questions, cracked wise a couple times, and sort of asked kind of leading questions, trying to get them to talk about what will the voters think in the upcoming election. And of course, people quickly just wanted to give their opinion, not so much what the voters will feel when they vote. Okay, coming up today at 8:30 p.m. UK time, it's James Valiant discussing Ayn Rand's essay, The Anti-Industrial Revolution. Talk about a relevant essay to today's topic. Ayn Rand was observing things in her time. And I'm sorry to say, today's left and today's conservatives, I think, would they make yesteryear's leftists and conservatives seem highly coherent and principled. It's very sad. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, no Clubhouse today. Actually, yes, Clubhouse today. Let's jump on Clubhouse for just a few minutes if any of you have anything to add. But I am running out of vocal capital, so it's really on one of you or a few of you to join me on stage. Let's do it for a few minutes and let's catch up. Thank you again. We'll be back here tomorrow, most likely me and Nikos discussing Elon Musk. So yeah, you might want to check that out here on the Daily Objective. And goodbye.